The suspect in today's mass shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh had an extensive anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish digital footprint. A source is also telling CNN that the alleged gunman made anti-Jewish comments during the rampage. So everyone's back with me to discuss this. Joining us is also Brian Stelter, our chief media correspondent. Brian, a lot of these anti-Semitic, this anti-Semitic vitriol that we're now digging up, and we're seeing more and more of it, was posted on a social media platform called Gab, which frankly until today I had not heard of. But just tell us overall, what is Gab?
Yeah,
how do people use it?
It is a fringe website that's a version of Twitter. Think of it as a version of Twitter, but it's popular among alt-right members and other kind of folks that don't feel welcome on sites like Twitter or Facebook. Why don't they feel welcome? Because Twitter and Facebook, despite all their many, many flaws, enforce a lot of guidelines, a lot of rules of the road. Gab's claim to fame is you can put up pretty much whatever you want, no matter how racist or ugly, and it's going to stay up on the site. So this person, this individual, was using Gab to share his anti-Semitic views. And as our colleague Paul Murphy pointed out, he's been doing a lot of research into this suspect's social media platform. Anti-Semitism was a fuel. It was a kind of fueled other hate speech that this suspect was posting. So it wasn't just anti-Semitism, it was also hate about immigrants, hate about other individuals. But at the core was this deep anti-Semitism that you see on his social media footprint.
And several of the messages that he was posting was against a Jewish refugee resettlement agency. And that was his point, is that one of the points he was making is that this agency is bringing people in, Jews in, and he said, among many other things, that my people are being slaughtered.
Yeah, this wonderful group, HIAS, it says, we welcome strangers, we help refugees. They've been making a big effort about this in the past few days.
For
you
decades.
Think about the timing. But yes, for decades they've been doing it. The past few days, a big effort to help refugees, given this migrant caravan story. And some of the rhetoric you see on this suspect's social media profile, talking about invaders, talking about illegals, this is also what you hear on the far right, on talk radio. You hear about an alleged invasion that obviously is not really happening, but that's the rhetoric on the far right. Some of these issues is with this suspect and with the bomb suspect in Florida. It's about our poisoned information environment, where people who are prone to radicalization, people who are vulnerable and are reading all of this nonsense and hate speech online, they become radicalized by what they read, by what they hear, and then they do crazy things.
Josh, we've just gotten in a statement from the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. He says that the Department of Justice will file hate crimes and other criminal charges against the defendant, including charges that could lead to the death penalty. This is something that we were expecting as soon as today. Your reaction to the Sessions statement?
Well, it appears as though the Department of Justice is bringing the full weight of federal law to this case. We understand that it quickly went federal with the FBI assuming jurisdiction on the ground with the investigation. And behind the scenes now, prosecutors will now assume purview of the case now that the person has been taken into custody. The subject will be interviewed. We imagine that's going on right now. There was an indication that he was hospitalized. Whether he's able to actually speak with investigators, that's still a question that we don't know. But they're going to want to interview him as quickly as they can. He'll then at some point be presented before a federal magistrate, and then the process will begin. But again, federal authorities bringing the full weight to bear here, it appears, and going after the subject. This is a potential death penalty case. Very serious violations, obviously. And
in the press conference by local and federal officials earlier, they made a distinct point not to say what he was saying if he was talking.
Right. That's a good point, actually. And what's interesting is, so what Brian was talking about, you look into the social media past, all of this is potential evidence that's now going to be used in this case. Fusing that together with what Jonathan was talking about earlier with this audio, those officers responding are now witnesses. Because when they hear him making those anti-Semitic comments, all of these will be brought together, this evidence in totality, to prosecute this individual.
Jonathan, because you have also dealt a lot with this platform, Gab, I just wanted to highlight some of the other comments that we have not yet reported on. As we know, Trump's daughter, Ivanka, converted to Judaism. She married Jared Kushner, who's an Orthodox Jew. And he wrote, and I'm not going to read it in its entirety because it's incredibly offensive, Trump is surrounded by, and then he says a slur, as long as Trump is surrounded by, things will stay the course. There is no MAGA, making America great again, as long as there is a blank infestation. So you've dealt a lot with Gab and this type of speech in your professional life?
It's digital threat intelligence. It's looking beyond the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Instagrams. It's starting to dive into threatening statements that are made in the deep and dark web, alt websites, So when we start looking at this individual, we're going to be looking at obviously his statements on Gab, but beyond that, how many other things has he been posting on? Again, these are red flags, but they highlight a real challenge for law enforcement: is the availability to take all of this information in, digest it, and then make a decision as to, do we go and look at this individual? Like, what is the threshold for law enforcement engagement? I mean, Twitter and Facebook and everything like that, they have standards.
Right.
When you start going into the domain that has no standards, that it's a free reign, behind paid firewalls, what is law enforcement's ability to get in there and start looking at early warning of anomalous behavior, some red flags? Every single time we've sat at this desk and we talk about, well, there was a posting here, there was a posting there. But how can law enforcement engage? And I think that's what we need to look at, is giving law enforcement the tools to look at everything. Listen, there's analytics around digital media every single day. I mean, Target can tell based upon my profile when I want to buy a blender, right? They should be able to come up with algorithms across the board, become unified, to start looking at this anomalous behavior to see what is an early warning sign for behavior that has the potential to move along the continuum from just rhetoric to physical action.
And just for the record, Gab says, hey, we support law enforcement. We contacted the FBI today. That's what they say. But the existence of these sites where you can do anything, say anything, and usually these guys will claim, oh, I don't mean it, I'm just playing around. But some of them are serious.
The tools that they need.
Okay, but even, Mike, even if they do have these tools to monitor, even if they have the manpower to monitor all these different sites, and if the environment is fracturing every single day, it's you can't act on that necessarily, short of an actual threat.
Well, I will tell you, major police departments do have social media awareness platforms now to monitor Twitter and Facebook for a host of reasons. Gang activity, lots of things. It's important. With a case like this, though, unless you know about the individual, let's just say we have that algorithm that's going to say, I'm going to go after them. Put yourself in the law enforcement shoe. If you don't know who it is, you don't know where the location is, it's not geolocated, it really isn't helpful, because we don't know where to go to protect them or engage them. With that said, someone creates a threat profile on him, whether it's neighbors, his family, for whatever reason, there's not enough evidence there for an arrest, but there's a lot of radical views and behavior. Somebody comes through and says, I think he's going to commit violence. You could do a targeted profile on somebody then. And if they say something like that, then maybe you can engage. But I will tell you, this is where civil liberties and law enforcement crash.
Josh? Sorry.
No, please.
But, because if you do that to the wrong person, civil libertarians are going to tell you, oh, this is Big Brother. Now, watching, these are the things that society has to balance, like to protect, just like we did after 9/11, to protect the country, there's certain measures we have to take, have to explain it to the public. And I think people generally agree. As long as it's not being abused, it's being monitored. But I think, without question, the first responders, the people that actually have to engage these people, need that ability to do it.
Let me give you one example, too, just as an example. So we've been showing the images here of the firearms, that the subject had on his Guns of Gab account. These are pictures of targets and the firearms. This is not evidence of crime in and of itself. This is protected First Amendment activity. This is someone who's saying, I like weapons, I'm an enthusiast, and I actually shoot pretty well. But what does it mean when this is then overlaid with some of this anti-Semitic garbage that we've seen associated with this person? Again, that goes back to the question I usually mentioned about building profiles. This taken together may be something that then moves it to another level. The question is anybody looking?
And this man posting on Gab 5 minutes before going into the synagogue saying, I'm going in. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say 5 minutes could have made a difference. If someone had seen that on Gab, they could have stopped him. But there have been cases where people have posted the day before or the night before that they might take some kind of action. And it's imperative that all of us kind of collectively in law enforcement and in media and in the technology companies get better at observing and witnessing and recognizing how serious this behavior is online. The virtual world, it's the real world now. The digital space, there are real life consequences now.
And as you were just saying, in comparison to the guy who was sending out all these bombs this week, he had a very normal online presence and seemingly no real red flags.
I think with the suspect in Florida with the bombs, lots of kind of angry political messages, but there wasn't the kind of anti-Semitic kind of or racist hate necessarily that we're seeing here. What I see the connection between the two cases is the idea that on the internet you can be radicalized. The way we talk about terrorists and in other countries being radicalized, Americans are being radicalized by crazy conspiracy theories, far right-wing websites, and some of these dark antisocial sites that spread memes.
And how often, for how long have we been using that exact same language when we're talking about terrorism?